Life lessons in fashion, very vague, large idea here. But before I get into the 7 life lessons of fashion, I want to do something I'm a little bit uncomfortable with. As you know, I make my living interviewing and writing articles about leaders of the fashion industry, watching and commenting about the best runway shows from around the world. So, as a fashion critic, but I'm going to talk about myself a little bit today, so I'm a little uncomfortable, so bear with me. Let me start by apologizing to all of you fashionistas out there who have dreamed about fashion since you were this big. That was not my case. I fell backwards into fashion. My passion for this very transformative and enriching industry came very relatively late in life. In college, I did not study fashion journalism, sorry. I did not study fashion design. I majored in political science. And my dream was to go into politics and eventually, hopefully, become the mayor of a small town in my home state of California. So that was my goal. Instead, I followed a man. The age-old story, right? To Paris, followed a man to Paris, got married, and I sent out one CV, one resume to the International Herald Tribune. The only CV I've ever sent out, and I got hired on the spot. Of course, you all know the International Herald Tribune now goes by the International New York Times, but we'll not go into that. I was hired as a research assistant, and then shortly thereafter I applied for and got the job to be the assistant to Susie Menkes. I wasn't interested in fashion still. I went to a couple of shows that first season, and it wasn't clicking for me. This was an assistant's job. And then all of a sudden, I saw a show from Guy Laroche. It was a young designer who had just coming into Guy Laroche, and it was a transformative, thrilling moment where I saw what artistry fashion designers can be when they're exceptional. And this young designer who basically changed my perspective on fashion, now you all might have heard of him now. He's kind of gotten a name for himself. His name is Albert Albaz. And as most of you know, he's gone on to do amazing things for women and transformed the industry with his work at Lanvin. So, as you can see here, I progressed from assistant to fashion reporter and then finally the online style editor of the IHT, which has about a circulation, when I was there, about 250,000 newspapers distributed daily. I don't know the figures for online, but I would imagine it's quite impressive. So, in 2012, I started my new online adventure with Now Fashion. And at the same time, I was also approached by the Singapore-based Designery magazine, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So over almost 20 years of working in the industry, I've learned quite a lot of fashion lessons, and I was thinking about how I could kind of present them to all of you, and I kept coming back to kind of these 7 key pieces of advice that I had been given over the years working in fashion, and how these kernels of wisdom really can point forward, a way forward for all of us in the fashion industry as a whole. So enough talking about me, thank God. Let's go to the first one. So, the first one is every picture tells a story. Of course, if we talk about the top layer of that, we're talking about finding that perfect photo that you put into your fashion spread in your magazine or in your newspaper that really defines a key moment in fashion. But that's not what I want to talk about here. When we did have our independent IHT.com site, the conversation was really one way. We would send out the articles, post them online, put them in the newspaper, and you'd be lucky if you would get an email or somebody would tap me on the shoulder at a show and say, I really loved your piece that you wrote. But it was very limited and very one way. And then I discovered the power of social media. And it was just a revelatory moment for me. I was finally able to really have a direct and unfettered connection and interaction with my readers. And the information was no longer this one-way street where I was just sending out the news, the reporting on the facts, but I was actually getting feedback directly and no filter from the IHT, no filter from the New York Times. And it was this wonderful conversation with the people that I was writing for, who were also, incredible lovers and passionate about fashion like I was. And so I became a very early adopter for Twitter. I think I started at the end of 2008. I launched my own blog. I got onto Facebook. I joined Pinterest. I did Instagram. I'm like all over the place. By the way, I've recently fallen in love with hyperlapse and tune picks. So if you guys don't know what those are, hyperlapse and tune picks, check them out because they could be really good for your social media work in the future. So now we're a moment where every person is a fashion observer, and these snapshot moments are being passed around the world instantly. So it's for this reason now that we really have to have a cohesive message, that brands really have to have a very cohesive message when they're going out into the world. You have to stay in character. You have to know your brand's heritage. You have to know what you want to tell, the story that you want to tell. Burberry, as you know, Louis Vuitton and Dolce & Gabbana are just three leading luxury brands that are really successfully shaping their online image and continuing to initiate new luxury consumers into the world and heritage of their brands. Now, another great example is Christian Dior, which has continued to be innovative throughout its history. So the next piece of advice I have for all of you is, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. Now, today's social media platforms make the fashion conversation immediate and comments are easy. Now, this life lesson is just kind of for me to talk to all of you fashion designers out there and try to tell you to not take it so personally if you get a bad review for your show. The goal of a fashion critic like myself is not to be mean or to be cruel. It's really to give constructive criticism and help designers evolve and grow their brands. And for those of you who want to be a fashion journalist like me, you need to remember that it's not, being a critic is not about saying that's something that I would like to wear. It's really about, does this show a designer progressing with his art form? Is there a cohesive and clear message? Is the designer bringing another or a new fashion element to the fashion conversation? Those are the kinds of things you want to be focusing on. Now, some of you recognize that last image. If anyone knows how to ignore criticism, it's Anna Wintour, right? So some of you might remember that in 2010, she decided that she was only going to stay at Milan Fashion Week for 3 days because she believed that Milan Fashion Week was too long, and then protesters followed her around for the 3 days dressed up like her to protest this snub of Italian fashion. And we've seen other fashion, gripe matches, grudge matches going on. We have Jean Paul Gaultier versus Tim Banks. We have Saint Laurent versus Cathy Horn. I think there's also Dolce & Gabbana versus Cathy Horn and Armani versus Cathy Horn. And even Susie Menkes was banned from Versace after Gianni Versace died. And some of the things she wrote at that time was not appreciated by the Versace family. So, and I've even recently, last week, I was talking to the designer J.W. Anderson, who just became the new designer for Loewe, about reading fashion critiques, and he says he's given up. He's not reading any more critiques, no more reviews. He's not interested. He said it just tore him up inside to read the reviews, and he said it was sending him in different directions. He didn't know where to go with his brand, and so what he's decided to do instead is to focus on the sales reports. He's created a formula that he sends out to all of the stores, the Loewe stores, that kind of critiques who the buyers are. So what age they are, what they bought, how much they bought, when they bought it. And that's the critique that he's interested in. And that's the one he focuses on. And that focus on the consumer, it brings us to my next lesson. The customer is always right. Right, everybody? The customer, end of the line, that's it. Customer's always right. Today's fashion consumers want everything now, here, as fast as they can get Instagram updates. That's what they want. And the concept of seasons, of course, we're in Dubai, so seasons don't really matter here very much anyway, but the concept of seasons has gone out the window as well. I just came off the flight from the Paris fashion shows, and I have to tell you, I had to keep looking down at my program to confirm that it was actually spring, summer season. There was so much leather, so much dark, so much heavy material that you would have no idea that it was a spring-summer collection in most cases. In fact, I was talking to designer Isabelle Marron, who has a very successful brand, a signature brand that she owns 100% in Paris, and she says she no longer deals with seasons. She just designs furs for the summer collections and see-through tops for the winter collections. She says because all of my customers are world travelers, global travelers, and they need different products all the time. Adapting to what the customer needs. And consumers, of course, are seeking inspiration on the streets and on the runways, and they want the look now, and they want the collections, immediately. So, the little test for all of you. Here we go. What do these three brands have in common? These were shows that happened this last week. Anybody? Do you know who these guys are? Come on. All right, so all the way on the right, it's kind of easy, the one all the way over on the far. Who's that? Moschino, right? In the middle? Versus. Who said versus? Versus. 2 points for the lady in the middle. Versus. And the last one, harder? Loewe. The new Loewe. All right? So, Anybody? What do these three brands have in common right now? Oh, smart. All of these looks are now already for sale. So they're on the catwalk on Friday, on Saturday morning. Those clothes were available online and in stores. Not the whole line, but a selection. So they're catering to the needs of their customer. So give fashion now. Give fashion now. All right? So what we're seeing now also is that the internet technology and globalization really equals the all and powerful consumer. But there's this tsunami of new technology which is really overwhelming the consumer. For example, in 1980, there were 6 major blue jean denim brands, and in 2010, there were over 800. So the retail market is saturated. The key is to get to the consumer first. Okay? You have to stand out. And the consumer-centric world, shoppers now want exclusive pieces at good prices. Today, the luxury consumption has moved from needing stuff or need stuff to a mentality of demanding experience. So it's not about need, it's about the experience, the interaction. There's actually a neurological connection about how the human mind reacts to external stimuli, environment. So an elevated experience connects the mind to release endorphins, which we all love, and it gives a feeling of euphoria and self-confidence. And the result is, if you're doing this in a store, that people want to buy more. And this release happens at 3 points. It happens in the anticipation of the event, during the experience, and then during the consumption, the purchase time. So this is actually one of the key factors or methodologies of brands like Burberry and Apple, and that's how they're driving sales, is they're creating these dynamic environments that get people stimulated. For example, at Burberry, their flagship store in London has about 500 speakers and 1,000 synchronized video screens so that everything is integrated. It's heightening the shopping experience. It makes you want to buy more. Okay, so the next lesson, it's one of my favorite lessons. Ooh, mosquito again. Can you tell I like mosquito? The definition of stupidity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. I hope you all know who said this one. Einstein? Anybody? Okay. So as designers, the designers of you out there, you have to bring something new to the table. You will not survive in this industry if you're rehashing ideas that have already been out there. You have to think outside the box, but at the same time, you have to stick to your guns of what you believe in, what your message is. And you have to be obsessed with the pursuit of perfection. And talent really does rise to the top. If you're good, you will get found. Okay? So, Jeremy Scott, freshness, fashion. I mean, his shows now at Moschino are off the hook. It was insane in Milan. I can't even tell you. It was actually quite scary, the scrum outside to get in. But other brands that are really embracing their originality and being different. So daring to be different. Charlotte Olympia, right? You can spot her stuff from a mile away, right? Just the sole of her shoes. You're like, that's her, right? Dare to be different. Sylvia, now she's focused on bringing the art universe into her fashion. And that's what separates her, and that's what makes her interesting. Okay? I love that photo. So pretty. Life lesson number 5. 5 out of 7. We're almost there, guys. If at first you don't succeed, try again. Alessandra Facchinetti is a very, very good example of this. You have to remember that some of today's leading fashion designers didn't rise to the top without having a few missteps or failures in their career. She, this is one determined lady. She had a very hard time working at Gucci, had a very hard time. It actually was quite an embarrassing finish at Valentino. Pinko was a bit of a disaster as well. And now she's found her home. She's at Todd's, beautiful collections, 3 seasons in, and the numbers are skyrocketing for her collections, which are expensive to say the least. So, but she's not the only one. Stefano Pilati was at Yves Saint Laurent for quite a while, but always really mixed reviews, not very good sales going on for him. But now he's finding acclaim and commercial success designing for menswear and womenwear for the Zegna Group. You really do learn more from your mistakes than you do from your successes. But the moment that you're able to conquer your fear about making a mistake, that's when you already are successful. So if you can get over the idea that you might fail. You've already so much further along than so many people out there. Okay. I love that. All right. Who would want to have those guys to judge you? Oh my God, I'd just about die. So, reap what you sow. Okay? That's right. You have to put the work in. Okay? I know that in this age of instant celebrity and the concrete catwalk outside all the fashion shows, it all looks so easy and, you can just be famous for nothing. It's not. It's really hard work. Okay? I was looking earlier, I was at the show for the Emperor's 1688, and I could tell that those 3 designers had actually gone to design school. I could tell by the cut. I could tell by the use of the fabric, the way it was done. And that counts. So it's 1 in a billion that you are born with a God-given talent to design. You need to study. Get a mentor. Learn from someone. Learn from someone who knows how to do it. Like I did, like a number of the major designers have done. I mean, if you look at the new designer at Sonia Rykiel, who had a fantastic start. She just did her first show for Sonia Rykiel, which is a brand that was dead. I mean, dead in the water. Nobody wanted anything from Sonia Rykiel. They had gone through 3 designers. Catastrophe, right? So she comes along for this brand that was like, on its last breaths, right? They were doing like CPR on that brand. Julie Delebranche, she came in and she knocked it out of the park. But she worked at Louis Vuitton before that for years with Marc Jacobs, learning the codes and the concepts and how to cut and how to design. And it showed on the catwalk. Another great example would be Junya Watanabe, who worked alongside Ray Karakubu at Comme des Garçons. The new designer at Paco Rabanne worked for quite a few years with Nicolas Ghesquière. So you really do need to, I can't stress this enough, train with someone. Take some time and go and learn with somebody who knows what they're doing, because it's invaluable. Now, the industry may not be made from the top. It's made from the people who are building their experience from the ground up. And many of the young, fresh-faced students and interns today that are working in these lower jobs are unseen, but they're gathering experience and gathering knowledge that you can use, in your future. And one other kind of side note here about working in this industry, it honestly pays to be nice. Okay? There's no point in being a, BITCH, right? Or a DIVA, right? And let me give you an example. There was this young designer in Paris called Guillaume Henry, and he wanted to start, and he came along, and there was this brand that nobody had heard of for like decades, Calvin, right? And over the 5 years that he was at Carvan, the editorial support that he got, of course, it's natural. New brand, you can have a great story for a new brand. It's great copy, easy to write, new designer, new brand. But for 5 years, he got a lot of press. And part of that was because they all adored him. He was a great guy, friendly, okay? And now, because he's such a good guy, as well as being talented, let's definitely be clear about that, he's parlayed that into now becoming the new designer at Nina Ricci. So a huge step up for him. So be kind, be nice. It'll get you far, I swear. I know it sounds like the fashion industry full of meanies, but we're a lot of decent people out there. Okay, so the final, number 7, the final one, all right, and probably the most important for all of you, and the longest one on this presentation, so hold on. Adapt or die, okay? So already we are seeing the total transformation of the newspaper industry. Now, generations of people consume their news via their tablets and smartphones and not the physical paper product. Now, I spent 16 years at a newspaper, and I have to say, since I moved to Now Fashion, I haven't picked up that newspaper since. I get it every day in my mailbox, and I don't read it because, you know why? Because I've already read it sitting in bed on my cell phone, flipping through the articles that I'm interested in, right? So that's a big shift. Magazines still have a role to play, in my opinion. But it's a changing one. We see the arrival of Net-a-Porter's magazines, the Edit every week online, and then, of course, Porter, the actually hard copy. And so I, too, was forced to adapt, right? I'm an old, curmudgeon. I've been doing newspapers for 16 years. But I had to adapt. And so at the same time, as I mentioned at the beginning of this speech, I mentioned that I got hired to be the editor-in-chief of Now Fashion, but I also was approached by a luxury magazine in Singapore, Designery magazine. So this is before the redesign, all right? So when I left the Herald Tribune, I really had to go outside of my comfort zone with this, and I did a top-to-bottom redesign of this monthly luxury fashion magazine, this Designery. And when I got to the glossy, it had a very lean, very kind of basic layout, but wasn't really in sync with the market and the positioning that Designery wanted to have its magazine. It had something similar to kind of more mainstream magazines such as, B or L, rather than what they wanted their competition to be, which was L'Officiel, Harper's Bazaar. So, do you recognize this? I loved that jacket so much on that cover that I went and bought one, okay? So I brought in a new art director, I brought in a new graphics team, new fashion director, new editorial staff to the magazine, and built it from scratch. And my first year into this project, the magazine was winning publishing awards in Singapore for its design and for its fashion shoots, okay? So at the same time that I was working my tuchus off with this, I was also the editor-in-chief of Now Fashion. And this is where I was following my passion. The other one was about getting out of my comfort zone and trying something new, which I think I rocked at. Thank you very much. Oh, cheer, thank you. But I followed my passion online, because this is really where I think the future is, the immediacy, the interactive of the internet. And this is why I said yes to Now Fashion. And now, if you don't know Now Fashion, I'm very ashamed of you, but after this, you all better log on immediately. And you also better all follow me on Twitter and Instagram, too, because you've had that on the screen since the beginning. So there'll be a test at the end, right? It is the first online magazine to publish photos in real time. So as the show is happening, as the Dior show or the Chanel show is happening, the images are already going up on the site. So, and the fashion reviews that I'm doing are up on the site within 3 hours of the finale of a show. So we are beating our competition, style.com, by a good 10 to 24 hours in some cases, depending on if it's Tim or Nicole doing the review. Let's see, what else? So when we launched, when the online magazine was launched in 2010, there was a huge acceptance by the online community who really loved that there was an independent entity out there that was going to the shows and was saying what they thought and wasn't, beholden to advertisers and having to be nice and write, safe reviews and yada, yada, yada. So right now we cover more than 3,000 fashion shows live per year, and that number is growing. And what we're doing is we're giving a 360-degree fashion perspective. We have behind-the-scene videos that we're putting up. We have photo coverage that actually starts before the show. We have outside, we have a photographer shooting the concrete catwalk, so you get a feeling of the environment outside the show venue. Then we have photography backstage, the makeup, the hair, that kind of a thing, the actual ambiance, what we call the vibes of the space, before you actually get to the point where the show gets underway. So that you really have a feeling that you're sitting in the front row, right next to me, at these shows. That's the goal, okay? And we're also democratic. We're not just doing Chanel, Dior, Valentino, Hermes. We're doing Damier Doma. We're doing Paul and Joe. We're doing Guy Laroche. We are covering everybody equally, giving them equal amount of time. And we're covering fashion weeks around the world. We've gone to places like Brazil, Dubai. Oh, not Dubai. Wait, maybe next year. Russia, Kiev, Iceland, just to name a few. I hope you guys can read these. So people who are using Now Fashion are web-savvy, industry professionals, fashionistas, and early adapters. I actually have a lot of press PR who say to me that they go on the site to watch and see when the show is over so that they don't bother the fashion editors and critics while they're at the show, so they're not like texting them and things like that. So they actually are on the show for that. That's kind of a B2B side of advantage to the site. Our average age of our user is about 30. And we're seeing what's really interesting is we're seeing an impressive increase in visitors to our website outside of the shows. So, you're seeing this peak. So you're seeing unique visitors between 300 and 900,000. And of course, the 900 is, the day that the Chanel show was on or something like that. There's definitely a rise there. And then monthly page views between 2 and 4 million, with an average time on the site between 3 and 6 minutes. But we're also seeing a lot of people who stay on the sites like for a half an hour at the time. If they have a particular show that they love, if they love Hermes, they'll stay and watch from the beginning, from that first street style shot all the way to the final show, which can be a good 30 minutes. What we're doing is we're leaving the traditional static media behind, and we're streamlining the process of getting fashion to its fans as fast as possible. And we're offering access to places, to people, to shows that before most of you would never have had the opportunity to have access to see up close and personal. You're not gonna, all of you might not have the opportunity to go to Brazil Fashion Week or to walk the red carpet in Cannes, but we want to take you there. That's the goal of our website. We also have for all of you bloggers out there, we also have a new feature where we allow you to embed our images into your sites. So if you have a personal blog or a fashion board, etc., you can go on Now Fashion and take those images for you to use on your site. So again, this democracy of fashion. Now Fashion also continues to adapt. It's not just me who's adapting, the website is adapting. We are already in the final steps, still working on the final steps of making an interactive mobile version of the site that will work seamlessly with tablets and smartphones. So that's it. I hope you've liked these life lessons and take them to heart and use them and enjoy them as much as I have. And before you go, don't move. All right, because I want to tweet about this. I just want you all, I'm going to take a picture. Okay? So, I'll move still. Okay, ready? Smile. 1, 2, 3. Okay, you were making a face. 1, 2. There we go. Thank you so much. Sorry guys, any questions? Sorry, anybody? I'm an open book. Yes, over in the back, hello.
When will you start covering Dubai?
Oh, you know what? I'm doing an exploratory visit this time. I'm planning on going to pretty much, I think the only show I missed was the one that was right before this, but I'm planning on going to all the shows, and the goal is to be back here for the next Fashion Forward, because so far I've been quite impressed with the quality of the work I'm seeing. So, next time, that's the plan.
For new designers,
yes.
It's great that the media is coming out to different countries and all of that, but also we need buyers to come out. And I know by the end of Paris Fashion Week, pretty much all the big major department stores have exhausted their budgets. Mm-hmm. Do you recommend that designers start to go to those fashion weeks? I know there's a lot of designers going there from around the world, but how would you recommend a designer to be able to build his brand or her brand? It's a very good question, and it's a kind of a bitter pill, because you're kind of, balancing two things. One is you really want to support your local, your country and your home. I would suggest, if you want to get your name out there, come to Paris, because if you want to be considered an A+ or a top tier designer, you need to show in Paris. I would suggest doing a showroom in Paris during haute couture, because if you do it during ready to wear, no one's going to come see you. There's just too much on everyone's plate. During haute couture, you still get the buyers, you still get the journalists, because if you get the journalists, then the buyers will come. You got to get the journalists first. And if you get the journalists to come to see your stuff, because there's a lot more open space during couture, and you get that press, and then you get the buyers, and then you get big enough that you can come back and hopefully show here. But I think that you could probably do both. The only other suggestion I would say, as a fashion journalist who did just get off a flight after the last fashion show in Paris, is that the best times to do fashion weeks in other parts is November, and end of October, November, beginning of December, April or May, because the rest of the year, just killer. You've got menswear, you've got haute couture, and you've got ready to wear eating up 6 months of the year. So those are the key months to try and get your mark and make an impression. I hope that helps. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes?
Yes, ma'am. Hi. For newcomers, they have to compete with big brands like Dior that've been there for quite a long time. Mm-hmm. Can you share with us an example where a designer grew organically, alone, without having to have the big names as mentors, and how he did it, how he succeeded?
Like I said, those are very rare. And off the top of my head, I can't think of anybody who's done it without having been trained somewhere else. I know that, and again, I'm speaking without, I would have to double check this, but I would say Dame or Doma has come along quite strongly in Paris, started with men's, which is also a kind of a clever way to get in because menswear is still, I mean, women's wear is a freaking nightmare. There's so many people doing women's wear, and there's so many of them doing it during the Paris shows, whereas the menswear shows are much more civilized, much more relaxed. There's, again, more wiggle room to get in there. So he started with menswear and opened a menswear store, and then progressively went into women's, accessories, etc. And he's probably one of the few that I would say grew organically, following his own vision. But again, it's like it's a needle in a haystack. So it really does take going to other brands and learning your skills with somebody who knows what they're doing and making those, because you're working there, you can make contacts that can help you on your own. That would be my suggestion. Anybody else? Yes, in the back.
Hi.
Hi.
You're not going to comment on style.com at all.
I can see who you are.
You said that don't worry, if you have talent, you'll get noticed.
Yes.
And I'd like to think with you, if you have talent and you don't have relationships, you won't get noticed. Like, I just want to check if you really believe in this. If you're not part of the fashion game, if you're not friends with some sort of socialite, have some celebrity endorsement, some PR will never get you if you don't come introduced by someone who he deems important, even if you are the next John Galliano. Like, have you seen this industry changing into a more and more planet of its own, where it's really a question of who you know?
I can't deny the fact that knowing, having some great contacts is going to, contacts help. I mean, a little black book full of great names is going to definitely help you. But I've had designers out of the blue email me over and over. Found my email online, or found Susie when I was working with Susie, her email online, and over and harassed us, and honestly harass people because we are so busy. Only the squeaky wheel is going to get noticed. So, send me emails. Continue to send us emails. Send us your work. Because if you keep doing that, I swear it will sink in. And we'll be like, okay, this guy has been emailing me, and he's doing a showroom during Paris Fashion Week. I got to go see him because he's never going to stop otherwise, right? And then I'll go, if you're good, we'll take it from there. I'll do a write-up about you. I'll talk to Sarah Mower about you. Sarah, you got to go check this guy out. That's the kind of how you get the wheel rolling. And you really have to be tenacious. I mean, you have to believe in yourself, and you have to be tenacious, because there are a lot of bells and whistles. There are a lot of people out there, and if you're not tenacious, if you think someone's going to come to Dubai and discover you when you're off working in a corner and you're not getting out there, good luck. I mean, that's not going to happen. You have to make yourself known, for sure. For sure.
I've heard a lot of talks about, how the future of fashion lies in technology, and how, one must, like you said, get on that train and make sure that you don't miss that, because it's now.
Yeah.
Right? I wanted to ask, what is the future of, say, sustainable fashion? Because I work with marginalized women and incorporate that into luxury women's wear. So on a global front, I was asking if you could give some insights on sustainable fashion.
Well, I have to say that what's really exciting about sustainable fashion is because it's so much better than it was when I started. Because, boy, there was some stuff that people were wearing just because it was sustainable and they were trying to look good, right? Now, not look good because the clothing was, but, look good to people around them. It's sustainable. It's gotten so much better. And there are a lot of people in the fashion industry now that really ask those kind of questions, like, is it fair trade? Where did the diamonds come from? That is playing a more and more important role for consumers. And if you're doing that, I mean, I know that's kind of a hook, but you want to put that forward, because that's going to appeal to people. I mean, even in the most generic way of, we're doing a sustainable issue, get yourself into that, right? And then if it's good and sustainable, it's even better. I mean, if it's a great look and you're helping, women in Africa or women in India or women anywhere.
Pakistan.
In Pakistan, fantastic. I think that only makes you want to spend the money more. I mean, I know that I saw a beautiful jewelry designer. Of course, I'm totally embarrassed because I'm having a senior moment and I forgot her name, but in the stands here at the garden, who's making beautiful sustainable jewelry, with, mammoth tusks and beautiful stones and, non-conflict diamonds, and stuff is gorgeous, right? First impressions, gorgeous. And, it's sustainable. Well, maybe I'll actually invest in that piece more than I would, something from Tiffany, because that piece has a story and that piece is helping somebody, and that has value.
Up to the minute photographs at a show or versus live streaming of a show, which is better commercially for the media outlets and which is better commercially for the designer? Or is there no difference in your opinion? Thanks.
That's a really good question. I don't know who I'm going to upset with this, but live streaming is fine, but it's just of that moment, and it's usually not the greatest quality. So I really think that having that powerful, strong photo, like boom, here we go, I think that probably has more of an impact and is more interesting than, because I find it nothing more frustrating than you go to somewhere like, watch the fashion show live here, and you click on that and it's already over. I find that really, really frustrating. So I'd rather have a fabulous lineup of photos than a live stream that I've missed and I can't get access to, and I find that frustrating. So for me, photos for the moment. Anybody else?
Hi.
Yes. Hi. Who?
I have the mic. So
Hi. She's got the mic. Sorry.
Hey, so newspapers are dead.
Yes.
And there are no seasons.
Yes.
Do you think there's a future for fashion shows? Like these fashion weeks like this? What's the purpose?
There is nothing replaces being in the room, right? If there is a collective experience that happens when you all see an amazing fashion show, right? You get chills. I mean, I do. I cried at Heider Ackerman 2 seasons ago. I admit it. Cried. Tears. Okay? And that's not going to happen if I'm watching it on a screen. So, yes, fashion shows, I think, still have an integral importance in this industry. I think, if you can't be there, come to Now Fashion and watch it, because we'll get you as close as we can if you can't sit in the front row. But I still think that fashion shows are key and express the soul of a collection in a way that nothing else can. I hope that answers your question.